across 16 years since we walked across the states together at LSU. And we had the same degree. We're both doing some interesting stuff. But we thank you for joining us today. Founder of the Aaron Johnson Fit Club, published author, and got your hand in a lot of stuff out there in Dallas. I've got a room full here at Velma Jackson High School, and we got some questions we're going to get to. And we're recording this for our friends at Rosa Scott, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, and for our YouTube channel. So you got an interesting story. We've looked at some of your videos, looked at your website.
And which videos did you look at?
Your YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you saw a few things.
Yeah, we saw some of the exercises that your breathing and your technique that you coach, and some of the exercises you demonstrate, and the multiple age groups that you've worked with, which is actually their next assignment. They have various age groups they're going to be working with for an assignment. But before we get into all the Aaron Johnson Fitness Club, I wanted to talk a little bit about your background growing up in Northern Louisiana, playing football at Grambling State for the great Doug Williams, and then going to LSU. So why don't you take us through that and tell us about your college experience, because this is a college career readiness class. And we've had some HBCU alums in here, but we have not had a Grambling alum, because this is Jackson State Alcorn territory here. As you're in WAC, but we'd love to hear about that, your college experience, and how that led to where you are now.
So just like you mentioned, and because I know you, and because as you mentioned, we have some history, and it's been 16 years, and I still, like you mentioned, I was at LSU a few years ago, and it dawned on me that I had been away from LSU for about 12 years at that time. And so it's been a long journey. Before then, when you met me, I had just finished playing college football at Grambling. I had gotten hurt my freshman year, tore my ACL, and that injury changed not only the type of person that I was, but the type of person that I was going to become. And so when you met me, we were all in the classroom, and not very many of those people were Division I athletes, if I can recall correctly. Yeah. And so it was that part astonished me the most, because I felt like as an athlete, the curriculum, the sports management, the kinesiology curriculum that we were going through was perfect for athletes. And so to see that not very many athletes chose that career path afterwards was shocking, because a lot of the things that they taught at the master's level, we learned those things early on in our sports career, whether it was in high school or middle school or some elementary school lessons of sports. Hold on one second, okay?
Oh, go ahead.
So before then, I was at Grambling State University. I was a 4-year athlete there. Prior to that, I'm from Shreveport, Louisiana. I played high school football, basketball, ran track at Huntington High School. I've been an athlete since age 8, officially playing competitive sports. I've always been, we always played, back then we played street football. So we were playing street football, since two-hand touch football, since we were allowed outside. So it's been a long journey. Right now, I'm almost 30. I'm 39 years old. So it's been about 30 years of play, athletic experience, coaching, mentoring, teaching, training. And my most recent venture, I wrote the book, Don't Be a Dumb Jock. Just kind of culminating all of the experiences that I had, plus the psychology that I was learning in that master's program. I think that was my favorite class, the sports psychology class.
That was a great class.
Because it broke down.
Yeah, with Dr. Rebecca Gardner. That was an unbelievable class we were in.
Yes. Yeah, and so that's because, like I mentioned, at the time I was going through an injury, and what I didn't understand was that the physical injury was as bad as the mental injury. And so once I learned that there was a psychology to repair the mind of an injured athlete, I dove right into that education. And that's what a lot of my book is about, is about how we are able to, as athletes, we're taught to overcome adversity. We're taught to We're taught teamwork. We're taught putting your best foot forward every day, because if you don't put your best foot forward, there's another athlete ready to put his best foot forward, and you never want to be the athlete that's not putting his best foot forward. So I kind of took those lessons throughout my life as an athlete, and it's been a good ride. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a lot of education.
Yeah, and I know, and you played a traditional SWAC powerhouse school at Grambling State. Some of these kids are just so sure that college sports are just so easy and they can just chill and, tell the coach what they want, and it doesn't work like that. It's like you said, there's always somebody willing to take your spot. And there is you are a student athlete. It's not just nothing's handed to you. There's a lot of academic stuff, and the practice schedule is absolutely insane. So why don't you tell, because we got a lot of athletes in here. We got some track and volleyball. We have some female athletes and male athletes. So why don't you talk a little bit about what it's like to play college football? And you played at the FCS level, which is higher than most people play. What is that schedule like when you are a college football athlete?
So right now I'm back in my hometown with my book, coaching some athletes. And what I find the most prevalent amongst the athletes is how they feel, how they can think that being an undisciplined person on the field or off the field is going to get you the best result. And so a lot of the times, as I'm mentioning, anytime you're not putting your best foot forward and the other person's putting their best foot forward, whether it's at practice, whether it's in a game, whether it's in a classroom, there's going to be a result. And so for myself, there was no drugs, no alcohol, as a high school athlete. Now, when I got to college, I did experiment in some things, but overall, this was like off season, not, it's just, there was a time for that type of behavior. And so, but going through my high school career, I was focused. You have to be focused. You have to be thinking 2 steps ahead, because like for myself, I didn't have a coach, or I didn't have a supportive cast around me. And so I had to believe in myself. I had to make my own highlight tape. I had to ship my highlight tape to coaches all over the country, just to get Grambling State to look at it and go, sure, we'll get this guy a scholarship. But my mom had gone to Grambling. My dad had gone to Grambling. My sister had gone to Grambling. So there was a legacy there that also helped me and help them to make that decision. And so you have to be connected. You have to have great relationships with the people around you, your coaches, the athletes around you. And this is just good for later on in life, your ability to network and your ability to build relationships with other people, to get things done, to get things accomplished. And so it taught me a long time ago, it taught me, like, if I wanted a scholarship and I was waiting on a coach to call me to give me a scholarship, or I was waiting on a coach to put together my highlight tape, it probably was not going to happen. And I'm 5'6", 5'7". At the time, I was 160 pounds, soaking wet. So I wasn't the best looking athlete, but because I had some grit about myself, because I had some self-confidence, some discipline, I really knew what I wanted to do. Then it just made it harder to stop me.
Now, before we get into the Aaron Johnson Fitness Club, I do want to talk briefly about somebody that went to HBCU undergrad and then a PWI for grad school. I like hearing people's perspectives on the pros and cons of both, because obviously they both offer great things that the other ones can't. So what are the main differences and what are the main benefits of an HBCU undergrad and a PWI grad school?
Great question. So spending 4 years at Grambling and spending 1.5 years at LSU, the biggest takeaway that I have from both is, one, at Grambling, I was able to build a lot more solid friendships and solid relationships with people on a social level, on an academic level, on a personal level. And then when I was at LSU, what the biggest difference was the money that they spent on their programs, their facilities, their the administration of their programs. So at the time, I think LSU was at $60 million per year profit, 12 games, $60 million per year profit. And so now I'm sure it's over $100 million per 12 games. You know what I'm saying? So when you looked at their facilities, when you looked at their trainers, how much they were paying their coaches, it's just totally unmatched. But the overall experience, the where I feel like I became a better person and grew up the most was at the HBCU, around the people of my culture. And we were able to, because at the time, Doug Williams was my coach.
Yep.
And so he was able to give us some real in-depth insights and conversations about what it's like to be a Black man in America, being discriminated against, even when you're the best, clearly the best. They still don't give you the sponsorships. They still won't put you on the commercials. They still won't, and so we heard those stories. And so it became really, really apparent that not only were we representing ourselves and our families, but we were also representing our community. Yep. And so working for LSU's football team, that message wasn't strongly enforced by those coaches and that staff with those players as it was at Grambling.
Yeah, and I'm sure these kids don't know who Doug Williams is because he's before their time. But Doug Williams was the first Black man to start a quarterback in the Super Bowl in Super Bowl 22, and won the Super Bowl with the Redskins. So he has a great legacy that he played at Grambling and then later became the head coach there. So that is a unbelievable mentor you got to have in college. I don't think these kids realize what a big deal that is to be able to play for someone that well known and that respected in the football world. But the Aaron Johnson Fitness Club.
He was also Super Bowl MVP. He was the first Black quarterback Super Bowl MVP as well.
Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, and went up having a great career. And he started out with Tampa and then went to Washington and won the Super Bowl. But let's talk about the Aaron Johnson Fitness Club. This is pretty interesting because you obviously are working with multiple ages. You're focusing a lot on technique and proper form, and it looks like you're starting with the young age. You have the type of the kind of like the PE type stuff, and then you're training the athletes, and then you're helping the senior adults as well stay fit and kind of prevent injury. So take us through how you got into this and what all you do, because it looks really interesting.
Thank you. So again, we're going back to grad school 16 years ago. As I was doing my research in my sports psychology classes and my other business classes, childhood obesity was trending. And so as an athlete, as a social scientist, as a kinesiologist, I cringed at the idea of kids not going outside, playing around, having fun, sweating, and just enjoying themselves. But when I was able to look at the research, there were other things that were happening amongst Americans that were causing these trends of these social problems like childhood obesity. So just in my research and from my own just intuition, I was like, I could do something about this. And I was like, all they need to do is, and I came up with this program from being an athlete, training myself. And one of my friends, he invited me to Los Angeles, California, right around the time I graduated. And so while I was in Los Angeles, I saw these skate buds. Were you able to see skate buds?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
So I saw these skate buds and I was like, man, I wanted to do it because before that, there were the Heelys.
Yeah.
And so the Heelys were the heel skate with the shoe in it. And so I got some skate buds. I learned how to ride them and I was like, man, this is totally cool. And so I took them to the Boys and Girls Clubs in Baton Rouge. The kids went crazy. I did a demonstration. The kids went crazy. I was like, man, maybe this is something that I could turn into a business. Ooh. And so through more research, I took it to some schools, some school districts, and they were like, this is a safety issue. And so I was like, a safety issue? And they was like, yeah, kids can fall and And I'm like, kids fall every day. It doesn't matter if they're walking or skating or whatever, they're going to fall. But it made me think differently. It made me think about like how I could turn that no into a yes. And so I created this fitness program. I was like, well, how about I put a fitness program on the front of it in order to, so that the kids will be strong enough to ride the skateboards. So sorry about that.
No, you're fine. The last thing we heard was about the safety issues with the skate buds.
Okay. So the schools were like, it's going to be a safety issue. So I said, okay. So, thought about it for a few weeks or whatever. And then I came up with this fitness program. And so before then, and because I had been injured, it allowed me to look at fitness from a different perspective. Instead of trying to make kids more strong, I wanted to prevent them from getting hurt, from getting injured. And so that's really what my program is about. It's about the fundamentals, starting the kids off with the fundamentals of fitness, stretching, breathing, blood flow, drinking water, fruits and vegetables, and progressing them through health and wellness and competition and sports from that perspective.
Yeah, and then and also you had the training with the high school athletes. So what type of stuff do you focus on with that?
So same thing really, because a lot of times those athletes are not getting proper training. They don't know they're not getting proper training, but they're not getting proper training. And a lot of times those athletes have injuries that they're working through. They've been injured previously and they've never rehabilitated the injury correctly.
Yeah.
So not only physically, but mentally. Yeah. So they're going through a physical and a mental recovery. They don't know what they're going through, and it could have an effect on their performance. So a lot of what we do with the high school athletes is more confidence, self-confidence, self-awareness training, mental coaching, that we can help them to continue to improve their performance, versus they have a great performance and then they're overconfident, yeah, or then they have a bad performance and then they're not as confident. So we try to keep them balanced in their thinking and their approach to the game, and that way they can continue success for longer periods of time.
Yeah, and some of them try to rush back too soon because they're so worried they're going to miss a recruiting chance that they come back and hurt themselves worse.
Right, and that's part of the politics. So that's another reason why we started the Skateboard program, is because we need to reteach proper sportsmanship. We need to rethink what competition looks like at a healthy scale, especially for kids under the age of 13. Because if you look at the basketball, the football, all these different sports, some of these kids are playing 8 games in 2 days or 8 games in 1 day, and then go, I don't know why I'm hurt, right?
All to make a bunch of money.
It's all to make a bunch of money. So that's another reason. That's another thing that we want to address while we're starting with the kids and their healthy habits.
Yeah, and then also you had the senior adults in there. You're 50 plus, and obviously they're going to have different types of exercises. But I think you did some pretty good research on seeing ways that you can change the technique, change the form, where they can still get stronger without overexerting their bodies. Because obviously an older body, as me and you both know now, an older body is going to have a little bit different limitations than a high school athlete.
Right. So as I started to design this workout program, I went into the gym to become a personal trainer, so I could get do in-depth research and analysis on fitness program on the average person. And so as I became a trainer, what I started to see is that the older generation, people were not concerned with them at all. Like it was almost like they were just saying, you're 50, 55, 65, you're about to die, don't worry about it. And what I was seeing is that a lot of those 50 and olders were injured. and they needed proper rehabilitation. They had never been through a proper strength training program. And when I started to stretch them, when I started to put them on light weights, when I started to teach them the correct breathing patterns, a lot of them became stronger. And so it was like, so what I was trying to do is I was trying to create a good program for the kids, but I end up seeing some opportunities with the older adults. And that's kind of so the older adults was really my research, but it turned into an opportunity.
Wow, that's incredible. Because so many trainers, they just focus on one area, but you've shown that you can be an expert on multiple. So that's really cool. And I think it's important. And some you talked about the research and the practice. This isn't something, I like lifting weights, let me go be a trainer. There's a lot of planning that goes into this, not just from the anatomy standpoint, but from the mental standpoint, because you have to know where people are coming from, and you have to be able to see what their goals are. Fitness goals, whether it's rehab goals, strength goals, whatever. And that takes a lot of education and a lot of planning. It's not just something that anybody can do. I mean, we have a lot of athletes in here and a lot of people that like sports, but there's a lot more to it than that.
Exactly. So imagine going through the LSU education, Les Miles, and that whole group right there, 2001 or 2004, whatever years that was, 2005, 2006, and then bringing some of that idea back to those high school athletes. Because if I ask those athletes right now, how many athletes you got right now in your class?
About 10.
10. Raise your hand if you have your goals for the season or next season written down.
Nobody raise their hand.
Exactly.
One. We had one raise her hand. She's a volleyball player.
That's 10%.
Yep.
Out of the 10. All right. So if we just incorporated setting goals, writing your goals down for the year, if we just incorporated that one goal, one technique, we would improve performance by 25%.
Wow.
Over everybody. So then we go, okay, so here's another technique. Here's another question. For all the athletes sitting in the room, when you have a bad game, do you talk down to yourself or do you talk up to yourself? Positive self-talk or negative self-talk?
I'm hearing a mix, about half and half, positive and negative.
Positive and negative. All right. Just improving the way they talk to themselves would increase their performance by another 20%.
Wow.
So without going into the gym, without teaching them a play, without any of that, we were just going to sit down and we're going to think about our goals. What do we actually want to accomplish? Out of that 10 people, out of those 10 athletes, how many of those athletes won a scholarship?
We had 4 hands go up.
So 40% of the athletes want scholarships. All right. So now we go, okay, out of those 40%, out of those four, we're going to come up with a plan, because the other ones, they don't know or they're not sure. So we'll wait until they're ready to make that decision. So with those 4, we're going to say, okay, which schools do you want to go to? They don't know.
Yeah.
Do you want to go Division I, Division II, Division III? What? They don't know. And so we'll iron out those details first. And then we're going to put them in a notebook. When you wake up in the morning, if you got a choice of being a slacker or going after your goals, that's the decision we have to make in the morning.
That's awesome.
When we wake up or while they're in your class. So then they go, okay. You see their goals. You see what the trajectory that they want to go in. You're there to help them, but then you see them slacking or you see them not putting their best foot forward. Then we come back to the goals. Is this going to help your performance? Is this going to help your current performance? Is it going to help your goals?
Wow.
And then they have to make a decision. Then that way they won't go, Mr. Greg, you didn't try to help me. You didn't push me enough. My parents didn't do this for me. My coaches didn't, but you didn't have any goals.
Yeah.
So how we can blame all of those people when you? So that's the first thing in my book. We setting goals. We have a trajectory, and we use our imagination. We're not using what we view as realistic. Oh, that's a realistic goal. No, we don't want to think realistic. We want to think above and beyond. And that way, when we start to implement a plan, it's above and beyond. Now, here's my last question for those athletes. And this is really for the entire class. How many of those athletes like to read?
Yeah, 2 hands go up.
Yes. Now, now, you're a graduate student. I'm a graduate student. We can break those demographics down. Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, on and on and on, right? And we can go 20% of the Black athletes read. I'm a Black athlete, so I have to make this distinction amongst my Black athletes because a lot of times we are 18% on our reading levels. So when I go to them and I go, oh, you want to go to a Division I school, but you don't read. Oh, you want to go to, you know what I'm saying? Oh, you want to get a scholarship, but you don't read? You don't like to read? You don't like to go to class? Now we got a conflict of everything.
Yeah, and I think it's funny, Aaron, every year I have kids say they want to go to LSU like I did, and I'm like, y'all don't have any idea how hard that grad school is to get into.
Now, that's another thing. Okay, who will vouch for you? Because somebody had to speak up for me in order for me to get in grad school.
Same for me.
I had to have you too?
Yeah.
I had to have a certain character. They had to look at me and say, he has a certain character. Yes, let me write a letter of recommendation. How many of those athletes, how many of those students in your class can get 3 letters of recommendation right now?
They sound pretty confident, but I don't know. I mean, some of them are still kind of young.
How about you?
They're all 9th grade.
They're all 9th grade. Would you write a letter of recommendation for them?
Some of them. Exactly.
So we got to start there. We got to make sure that their character is in check. We got to make sure that they're reading. And part of one exercise that I like to do with the kids is that the kids I'm working with now, I go, well, what city are you in?
I'm right outside Jackson.
Jackson, okay. What is the median income for Jackson, Mississippi?
Now, the city of Jackson is not that high, and we're in a rural area, and we're actually this is an all Black school, so we have more resources than most here, but the median income of the city of Jackson is one of the lowest in the country.
Exactly. Now,
somebody just looked it up, 22,000.
How much?
Somebody just looked it up, 22,000. Like I said, very low.
There we go. Now divide that by 12. That's how many months is in a year.
That's less than 2.
That's your monthly income. That's the average person walking around Jackson is making that monthly income. Can you buy those Balenciagas with that? Can you buy that gold chain with that? You can't. What's the average rent?
In Jackson, now that's one thing. It is actually kind of lower. It's lower in Mississippi, but in these big cities they want to live in, like Dallas, it's a lot higher.
Yeah, we're talking about $1,200, $1,500. The average.
Yeah, just to lay your head down.
Just to lay your head down. So I'm asking the students in the class, if 22,000 is the average, are you above average, below average, or are you an average person in the class that you're in? Right?
Yeah, we have some various answers going out right now. So,
all right. So if your reading level is average, and you stay in that city where you are right now, you'll make $22,000 a year, being average. If you want to be above average, you got to read above average. You got to work above average. You can't be average and then expect above average type of situation.
There you go. That's a great quote. And I also show a video at the beginning of the class, and it's Eric Turner, the hip hop pastor, and he said, in order to live how you want to live, you have to do things you don't like to do.
Right. Now that's for my athletes. All right. They like to work out. but they don't want to go to class. They like to work out, but they don't want to watch film. You like to work out, you like to play in the game, but you like to listen to the coach, but you don't like to listen to your teacher. Is this average or below average or above average performance? So
I got real quiet on that one.
Yeah, a lot of them are not ready for the reality of a $22,000 a year lifestyle.
Yeah.
With just a high school diploma.
Yeah.
Some of those kids don't want to even graduate high school. So what you think you're gonna make? Yeah. You're gonna make $12,000 a year. And I'm gonna even go a step further. Because you said we got an all-black audience right here, right?
Yep.
All right. I'm gonna go a step further. Your reading level. If you cannot read past an 8th grade reading level, your chances for going to jail or prison are 80%.
Wow.
I'm gonna drop the mic and look it up. Look up the statistics. Yeah. You can look it up.
I believe
we do statistics. Me and you, we do great. We do statistics. Go and look up the statistics. The average black male that cannot read past an 8th grade reading level is going to prison. And the average is really around a 5th grade reading level.
Yeah.
That's the average. So let's take these things into consideration. I know this is probably some new information for some of you, but your reading level is going to determine your success level. It's just what it is. Yeah. You can debate it. You can take the next 4 years and argue with that point if you want to. But if you don't start to read better, your test scores are going to show. You won't be able to get into schools. Your job performance, trajecting. There's a trajectory that you're on.
Yeah. But I do have a couple of questions I want to get to from the kids because we are running out of time. But this first one is really good. And this is Tristan, and they're all ninth graders. This is Tristan Williams. He plays football, baseball, track, powerlifting. And he asked, what was the biggest mental barrier after you got injured?
Okay, good question. So I get hurt, right? I was a starting slot receiver. Okay. I got hurt. The person that took my spot went to the NFL. Wow. So for the 2 years after my injury, I had to watch the guy who took my spot score touchdowns, break Jerry Rice's receiving records. It was very difficult to the point where I thought and I contemplated suicide. I talk about it in my book. Now, another thing too is for those athletes, if you do not know who you are outside of sports, if you do not know what type of person who you are outside of sports, when your sports career comes to an end or when there's an injury, you're going to have self-identity issues. You're going because you're so tied up into the person that you are as an athlete. But when that's gone, then you have to come to the realization of who am I without all the people screaming my name? Who am I without scoring the touchdowns? Who am I without the championships? And that is probably the most difficult part of, after watching this guy break the records, then I still had to determine who am I? Wow. Did I answer this question?
Oh, big time. This is Alonzo Johnson, and he asked, if you have an unmotivated client, how do you tell them to get moving again?
Well, if they come to me, they have some motivation. They already have some motivation. So I find out what their goals are. Okay. And then I fix my training so that they will see that that we're reaching towards their goals. That's one thing. Another thing is that I allow them to win in the workouts. Okay. So a lot of our mentality as trainers can go work, push. If you don't push, you suck. Right? That's one approach. But then another approach is, if they're less motivated, give them something that they can do that gives them some type of encouragement, that builds their self-confidence, and don't overdo it. Yeah. So don't try to train them like they Olympic stars the first workout. Train them at a lesser pace, allow the program to progress over time, and then they'll start to trust you. A lot of times they're not motivated because they don't trust the trainer. Yeah. And they don't know the trainer. So once they see that you're a good trainer and you're looking out for their best interests, their motivation will start to happen naturally.
That's awesome. I got just one more from the students. This is Maya Dixon. She's one of our dancers, and she asked, "What's the most enjoyable thing you've done in your career?"
Working with kids. Yep, and my mom has been trying to get me to get a real job for 16 years now. 15 years now. And so, but what happened was, when I started going into the Boys and Girls Clubs, the reaction from the kids was it was joyful. It was enjoyous. It was genuine. They were authentic. They were truthful. And I like working around people that are truthful, that are genuine, that are authentic. And so working with the kids, and so 15 years later, I've been through a lot of ups and downs, but when I go and start working with the kids, all of that stuff kind of goes out the window. And then I know what my purpose is. I know why I'm there. It's not just to make some money. It's to make a difference in these kids' lives, like somebody was able to do for me as well.
That's awesome. Well, Aaron, we're almost out of time, and I thank you so much for joining us. And man, it's so good to see you. When I come to Dallas again, man, we got to get together. I mean, we'll definitely do this again. But again, AaronJohnsonFitnessClub.com. You guys got some great stuff out and got a great program.
Is there any way I can look at the crowd and look at the students?
Nope.
Okay. Hey, can I say one last word?
Yeah, what you got?
All right, fellas, the men in the room, okay, it's time to step up, all right? A lot of times we don't have the male figures, the masculine figures around us to copy or to emulate or to be able to mentor and train us. And so we have to take it upon ourselves to reach out to men that are genuinely interested in our well-being outside of sports. All right. And don't be afraid to talk. Ladies,